Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Armor Show. My name is Brad Cooper, president of Cooper Financial Investments. And as always, I would like to welcome our amazing, awesome co host, Tony Shore. How are you doing, Tony?
Amazing and awesome. I don't know. I think you're overselling it a bit, Brad, but
Not at all.
it's great to be here, Brad. Seriously, this is so much fun, and I always learn something from you each and every week. And we were talking a bit before the show, and I know we've both been really busy, and I can't wait to. We're going to do the show together down there coming up here in a bit.
That's right.
That'll be great, and you can come up to Minnesota to the state-of-the-art recording studios there at Gradient, and we're going to do a big video podcast. That's soon, right?
Yes, looking forward to that. That's going to be, I think, the third or fourth week of March. So just one promise you got to make me, Tony, is no snow.
You know what? I can't guarantee that. I mean, between now and May,
anything goes, right?
We've had blizzards the first week of May in Minnesota, so which is crazy, but it happens. This year, it's been an odd year, though. We've hardly had any snow. It's going to be.
You're right.
When the show airs, it could get to 69 degrees here or 70.
That is crazy.
But then it's going to drop back into the 30s and 20s. So isn't that nuts? It's just been nuts this year.
It's typical Midwest weather. I'm from Missouri and been there my whole life out here in Arizona for a little over 10 years now. But I just looked at the weather forecast after talking to my mom, who should be a weather lady because she keeps up with the weather daily.
Oh, sure.
Same way there. I think it's supposed to be 80 degrees here in a couple days, and then it's supposed to fall down to 30 and snow for a couple days and get back up to 45 or 50. Crazy.
Yeah, we've had the extremes. We've had a very mild winter here in Minnesota. This is the time of year where people go ice fishing, and it's not this year. You don't want to go out on a lake. No. It hasn't been cold enough.
You're right. I guess that why they call that climate change.
Yes, I don't know what's going on. You never know.
Something's changing. So
we have extreme colds and extreme hots, though. That's what's weird. Extreme heat and extreme cold. Well, today I know you said you want to title the show 4 Retirement Chapters. Your 4 retirement chapters. I have my 4 chapters. Number 1 would be chapter 1 would be just called pizza. That would be the total.
I like that. Yes. Then what would chapter 2 be?
More pizza.
And then 3rd?
By that time, it would be healthcare is needed.
Well, you got to throw in some sweets,
Sure.
One thing I was cursed with from the Midwest was a sweet tooth. So after every meal, we have to have something sweet.
Yeah. My parents they still each have a bowl of ice cream every night before bed, and it's just like, and there's not an ounce of body fat on either one of them, right? So I don't know how they do. Wow. If I did that, I would weigh even more than I do right now, Brad. That's
I don't know how they do it. When my girls were growing up and much younger, they taught me the term YOLO, YOLO. I said, "What's YOLO, girls? You only live once, Dad. Enjoy life. Eat ice cream every day."
That's right. That's right. You only live once. YOLO. What are the 4 actual retirement chapters? Where do you want to start with this topic?
Yeah. Well, an article I read from Kiplinger talked about the 4 phases of retirement, and basically the 4 chapters they broke down of retirement, which makes a lot of sense, and really a lot of what we cover when we're visiting with new people and we're doing speaking engagements. We're hitting on a lot of these topics. But number 1, which they talk about, is in your pre-retirement years. That may be about a decade before retirement. You may be 50, 55, even 60, depending on how much longer you want to work. But basically, where you want to start at is, what's your retirement goals? What's a good target date that you have in mind that you would like to retire, number 1? And then what type of lifestyle would you like to, have? Is it the same as what you have now, which most of us, and I'm speaking for myself and probably you too, as well, Tony, is when we get to retirement, I don't want to have to stay home because I don't have the money to
Right.
go
I
out
don't
and
want to
buy
take a pay
ice
cut.
cream.
Yeah.
And with inflation, what's the cost of ice cream going to be on a
Yeah.
daily
A
basis?
lot. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the pre-retirement years. It's interesting because when you talk about the four stages or chapters of retirement, I've heard of the three stages of retirement, which are your go-go years, your
Yes,
slow-go years, and your no-go years. But you've added a fourth, which really is the most important, and that is pre-retirement, the 10 years before retirement, where you're really kicking it down to get a plan in place and be prepared, right?
absolutely. And it's so enjoyable, Tony, to sit down and visit with, younger people, I call it, who are in their pre-retirement years because a lot just don't know if they have the option. They don't know if they can retire at 62, 65, or 70. And most people I sit down with think they don't have enough money. But
Mm,
one of the key questions is, identifying, of course, your goals. But secondly, is okay, let's fast forward. Let's say you're at retirement age now. How much money would you like coming in on a monthly basis total? And if you knew that amount was coming in on a monthly basis for the rest of your life, what would you want that number to be, that amount to be? And then we can identify if that can happen or not based on the age you give us you want to retire.
Interesting. And I bet that is one of the biggest questions. I want to retire when I'm 67, let's say,
Right.
and or somebody says I want to retire at 65. Uh, the biggest question is, how do I know I'll be able to? How much money will I need to retire at that age? And what do I need to do to be prepared? And that's where you come in. And I think, Brad, you illustrate the point. Most of us, we're only going to retire once and go through this process once, right?
Right.
And you, though, go through this process every single day with people you're working with. You're doing this every day. That's why you're an expert in this field in retirement planning, because you're helping people go through this process every day. You've been helping people with this for years, along with their investments, maximizing Social Security, minimizing taxes. Overall retirement planning and retirement income planning is what this is all about. And so that pre-retirement chapter is so huge. I mean, once we turn 50, we feel that chapter becomes even more important. So there are things we need to be doing during this time, aren't there?
Absolutely, Tony. The second appointment of our 5-step process as we're going through with a person is what we call the fact and finding session. During that session, we're going to ask you for all of your information: brokerage statements, IRA statements, 401k, tax returns, bank statements. And we're going to gather all that information. And after asking you a lot of personal questions and also identifying what your risk tolerance is, which is so important. Overall, our industry as a whole does a very poor job at that. And when we
Yeah.
do projections, and we have an amazing user-friendly income report called our Compass report, which we will do for everyone who comes to our office. It's kind of like a GPS from where you're at now to get you through the rest of your life to make sure you nor your spouse ever runs out of money. And the projections and the illustrations we use are very conservative. I always tell people I would rather come back to you in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years and apologize because you have more money than not enough money, because we're not going to use 8, 9, 10, 12% returns every year through retirement because that's not realistic. So we're
Right.
going to be ultra conservative. And normally we cut the percentages that we put on paper in half of what the historical returns have been, just to, be very conservative with that. So that's uh, that's probably one of the most important meetings we'll have through our process is finding out what's important to you. What
Yeah.
do you want? I'll
Yeah.
never forget. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to agree with you. That's for sure. I mean, clearly, you can't prepare for retirement without that plan and having an idea of how much money you're going to need, right?
That's right. I'll never forget. This happened many, many years ago, and I've seen it happen probably at least 50 times since, where we're working with a person who's waiting to retire maybe in the next year, 2 years, 5 years. And they always think they're going to need a lot more money than what they actually do. And when I follow back up with them in 6 to 12 months after they retire, I would say 95%, if not 98% of everyone that we help says, wow, we're not spending as much as we used to. We're
Right.
saving money on taxes, or we're saving money on insurance. Now, since we're over 65, Medicare has kicked in. So that's very, very rewarding.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that probably brings us to the second phase, chapter 2. What's the scoop on chapter 2? That retirement chapter. That's the chapter I call the go-go years,
Go-go.
right?
That's right. The go-go years normally are in the age range of 55 to 75. Those are usually mostly the most expensive years of your retirement. Why? You're healthy. You're excited. You don't have to go to that 9 to 5 job anymore. I just spoke with a client of mine a few days ago, and I said, how does it feel, to wake up every morning and not have to dread the Mondays or the Tuesdays or the Wednesdays? Brad, it's awesome. If I would have known how great, I would have done
Right.
it earlier. But keep in mind, a lot of our clients love to travel. They have other
Yeah.
hobbies that take money. So, like you said, Tony, the first phase of retirement is the go-go years. And
Yeah.
that's good because those go by fast.
Yeah. Well, and it's when people are young enough that those first few years of retirement, like you say, most people are healthy enough to still travel. Maybe they get an RV and want to travel the country, hit all the national parks, or, fly to Europe or take the grandkids to Disney World. These are the kinds of things I think people do in those early retirement years,
Right.
or they might want to remodel or downsize or move. And so you're on the go during those years of retirement. So you're right. I bet you do see that's the time when people spend the most money typically in retirement.
They do. And also to add to that is, you know, if you have children, normally you become empty nesters. However,
That's true.
another reason why a lot of new retirees, including, maybe first phase, even second phase, spend a lot of money is a lot of times, especially nowadays, the kids come back, knock, knock, knock. Mom, dad, can I stay here for a few weeks? Which becomes 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Life happens. And we're finding that can be a financial burden on a lot of our clients if you're not prepared properly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And we're finding, with 3 kids in college and in their adulthood, as we get closer, my wife and I are both in our 50s, and we're thinking about what's retirement going to look like, where will our kids be, and will we still have that expense? We thought the biggest expense with children would be when they were younger, but we're finding, college age is actually the most expensive we've had it, with car insurance, helping them with new vehicles, helping them with college. That can be very costly.
Absolutely. Been there, done that. Not for three, Tony. So,
Yeah.
but for
Yeah.
two, and I'll never forget a good friend of mine who's a doctor. His kids and our kids went to school together. Plus, he has several other older children. And I'll never forget one day. Of course, you're looking from the outside in. Beautiful family. Everything's perfect. Doctor, good income, kids are in college. And he was almost in tears. He said, Brad, I never thought parenting adult children would be so difficult and so
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you may have some more expenses when you're in retirement with kids. Hopefully they're grown and on their own by then, and that'll help. But you're right that part of that chapter 2 is you may still be helping them pay off college debts or
Right.
with things like that, or get on their feet. So I can see that as being part of your early retirement years, and that being a part of that cost too. So
Oh,
early retirement years, you want to have a plan for what your goals are for that, so you know how much you're going to spend. I mean, and what you're going to do. Of course, we've talked about that on other shows, but those are the fun years of retirement. So that's chapter 2. What about chapter 3?
Chapter 3 is your middle retirement years. So basically, we would call that the second phase of retirement. Would be, what is that called again,
The
Tony?
slow-go
The
years.
slow
You
go.
start to slow down maybe a little bit, right?
That's right. You're starting to travel less. Hey, if the kids and grandkids want to see us, they can come see us. We
Right.
are just too tired to hop on an airplane, fight the airport crowd, and go see them. So you spend a little bit less. Also, in these years, healthcare expenses become,
Yeah, they might
more.
start to creep up, right?
Yes, I just had a conversation a few days ago, and I was asking, "How's retirement?" Client and friend just retired a year ago. He said, "Brad, ever since I retired, we've been going to the hospital and going to doctor's appointments several times a week. It seems like
Yeah.
our bodies are starting to fall apart now, and we're starting to see, a lot more doctors and healthcare expensive. But also, be aware. Here's another thing in the article. It stated in all caps: be aware of what Medicare doesn't cover. And we've talked about this before,
Oh,
Tony, and because you you would believe this because you see it, and you interview a lot of advisors, but a lot of people have no idea that Medicare, does not cover long-term care costs and some
right.
other costs. A lot of that's out of pocket. I'll never forget, I read an article Fidelity put out a couple years ago, and the article said if you're age 65, from age 65 to 85, that 20-year period, and this is not including long-term care costs. Fidelity stated in their study that the average retiree between 65 and 85 will be out of pocket over $260,000
Oh,
related to healthcare. Now, you may say, well, Brad, I have Medicare. Yes, but the cost
there's
and
still
what
costs
Medicare
involved,
doesn't cover,
right?
the other expenses, the mileage, the lodging, you
But you
name it.
still have premiums. You still have deductibles. You still, in some cases, have co-pays, even with Medicare. And the things that Medicare doesn't cover, I just shake my head at, because the 4 things that I see, like with my grandparents and my parents needing the most as they get older,
Right.
are the 4 main things that Medicare doesn't cover: hearing, vision, and dental, and long-term care. Those 4 things are not
Right.
covered by Medicare unless you have a supplemental insurance or an advantage plan that does cover that. But then there might be costs involved with that as well. And that's why it's so important to plan for that as well. But, my dad is needing hearing aids, and to get decent hearing aids, it's thousands of dollars,
It's
right?
crazy, isn't
And
it?
Medicare doesn't cover
No.
that. No. Now, some people say, well, mine does. No, it's you probably have a supplemental or an advantage plan that covers hearing, vision, and dental. Your Medicare does not.
No, it doesn't. And just to add to that, I would say we have probably, if you look at all of our clients, over 60 to 70% are veterans. So if you're a veteran listening out there, thank you so much for your service to our wonderful country and serving us and sacrificing your life many years
Yeah.
ago. And I share this with you because there are so many unclaimed, unknown VA benefits. And
Yeah.
some of those will pay hearing aids and other
Yes.
expenses. So if you're a veteran, be adamant. Pursue what benefits are out there for you. If you have any questions on that, we have some amazing veteran clients that love to educate, others on all the unknown benefits that go unclaimed just
Yeah.
because the information and education is not out there enough.
Yeah. I read a statistic that I forget what it is. 60% of all veterans are not utilizing all the benefits available to them. They're leaving
Wow.
money on the table and paying out of pocket for things they wouldn't have to. So veterans are different. I was talking about just straight standard
Yes,
Medicare, but if you're a veteran, there are benefits available to you that may cover a lot of things that just traditional Medicare wouldn't. And so you need to make sure you're taking advantage of that. And I know if our listeners have questions about that, they can call your office and you'll hook them up with somebody that could help them.
absolutely. We're all about education, Tony, and like the majority of people we talk to, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Work with a financial planner who's holistic, who will educate, who will spend the time and easily explain to you, all the options that are available to you. I'm reminded daily, Tony, that our firm, and there's other firms like ours, not as many as I wish there was, but we're a relationship educational firm.
Sure.
And the majority of our industry is not that way. So work with a holistic financial planner who is going to spend time with you and not charge you hundreds and hundreds of dollars per hour to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important. And I think that's great that you and your team there at Cooper Financial offer that. Now, another aspect I would assume of chapter 3, when you're starting to slow down,
Yes,
you really want to make sure, of course, you should do this before, but you want to make sure your legacy and estate plans are in order, right? And this is probably a
absolutely.
good time during this stage to review that.
Absolutely, Tony. And that's something that we are doing as a free service with the help of our strategic partners, some of the best estate planning attorneys and knowledgeable in the United States. We will, with their help, of course, they will review your estate plan at no cost and let
Wow.
you know if it's up to date, if it's compliant with Arizona laws, especially maybe if you did it years ago in a different state. That's important. So revisiting not only your estate plan, your legacy plan, like you said, and also we'll be covering long-term care options. Do you have long-term care policy? If not, we talked about last week, different types of options for that as well. And this all is part of chapter 3, the middle retirement years.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's very important. Now, we can segue right into chapter 4 from there because you mentioned it, long term care. That's got to be a big part of chapter 4, which I call the no go years. So we have pre retirement. Then you have the 3 stages in retirement, which are go, slow go, and now chapter 4, the no go years, the slow down years, right?
That's right. And normally they say the no go years, it's different for everyone, starts at 85 years of age and older. And the no go years, you know what? Maybe you're homebound. You cannot get out of the house. Maybe you're in assisted living or skilled or memory
Yeah.
nursing home, and really you have no options. So paying for healthcare can be so costly and pricey if you're not prepared. But the good news is, there's so much information out there. There's so many, resources that we share to be proactive to help you with that. Focusing more on retirement, chapter 2 and 3 will help you prepare for the latter years. And
True.
article I want to cover real quick: 6 ways to find companies that are hiring retirees. you know, that's another segment we'll have to get into at a different time. But I do have clients call me that say, Brad, we listen to you. We want to be proactive. What's some other areas that we can do to prepare and maybe come up with money to help fund some of these strategies that help offset some of our future long-term care costs. And one of the things we'll get into at a different show is there's companies out there, and we'll get you hooked up with a lot of these companies that will help, identify certain jobs
Yeah.
if you're wanting to
Yeah.
work part-time.
Yeah, well, you're still able in those earlier chapters if you want to work part time. That is one way to be better prepared for long term care later on. I like your point here because long term care is very expensive. You've mentioned
Yeah.
it on shows before. My mom is in long term care, and now my dad. I just spent this past
Oh, I'm
weekend
sorry.
with him trying to figure out where he can go because he's getting to the point where he can't do some things on his own. And my mom has been in a facility because she has Parkinson's, advanced Parkinson's. So, at some point you're going to need it. My mother's costs, it was 6,000 a month. Now it's $10,000 a month where my mom is at. So can you imagine 10 grand a month? People are like, well, how could I ever afford that? Well, you have to have a plan in place, right? And it kind of ties into estate planning and elder care. You want to make sure
Right.
that if you have a big sum of money, do you want it to go to a memory care unit or your loved ones? There's ways to set it up, right? To make sure, that Medicaid can cover your long-term care, but that other chunk of money can go to your kids, but that has to be done early on. You can't wait until you're in long-term care to make these plans, can you?
That's right. Tony, we're going to have CJ Eager, the president of Copper Canyon Law, who we had on as a guest
Oh,
a few
yes.
weeks ago. We're going to
Yeah.
have him talk more specifically about elder care planning because,
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
huge.
not only have you shared in previous shows about your mom, but now you
Yeah.
may be facing your dad going in. So now
Yep.
10,000 could become 20,000 plus per month.
Yeah.
And that can eat away at an estate very quickly.
Yo, very. And long-term care, but there are ways, you have strategies that you
Right.
utilize with your clients early on, even as early as the pre-retirement stage, to plan for long-term care. And you don't necessarily need an expensive long-term care policy.
Right.
They're harder and harder to get anyway. There are other ways to get long-term care and at least help cover it. And I know you have a lot of different strategies for that, but that's where people are going to be at in that fourth chapter, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people, 2 out of every 3 people who live past the age of 65 will need long-term care. That's where we're at, right?
You're right. And so we take that very serious. And just remember, there are strategies out there that we offer that can help with that. Even though my industry as a whole does not offer a lot of these many strategies, there are solutions to that issue. So,
Yeah.
and so as we come to a close, Tony, wow, this has been the quickest, show in a while.
I know.
Uh, let me just share for more information on this topic and what we just discussed. You can call our office directly at 520-543-8345. Again, that's 520-543-8345. Or you can visit our site at financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com.
All right. Well, Brad, great show today. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of the Financial Armor Show with our host, Brad Cooper. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Tony. See you next week.